Cartel enforcers invaded Caleb Mercer's Texas ranch and forced the old farmer to his knees while Annie watched. Outnumbered and limping, Caleb let them laugh when Raphael said the ranch belonged to them until sunrise. He stayed quiet, noticing the blue feed tag beneath their truck tire, and knowing they had already made their first mistake. If you enjoy stories where arrogant criminals discover too late that they chose the wrong victim, leave a like, subscribe to Wrong Victim Stories, and tell us what city or state you are watching from. Now let's go back to the moment they made their first mistake. 3 hours earlier, Caleb Mercer had been standing behind the feed counter in his barn, trying to convince a rusted adding machine that 2 sacks of mineral mix and a coil of fence wire did not cost more than the customer had paid. The machine clicked, stuttered, and gave him a number that made no sense. Caleb tapped its side with one thick finger. "You and me both getting old," he told it. The barn smelled of hay dust, leather, and grain. June's old blue paint still showed on the shelves, and through the open doors Caleb could see the round porch light she had chosen years ago because she wanted the house to look welcoming. Annie arrived after school with coffee, a heavy backpack, and the usual joke that 68 qualified as ancient. Caleb took the cup and limped back to his invoices. The leg had been broken by a bullet in 1998 and injured again by a horse, though he blamed only the horse when people asked. Annie knew old scars produced short answers. She climbed onto the counter and opened a chemistry book. Caleb went back to tying invoices in a neat bundle with cotton string. Outside, a dry wind moved dust along the yard in pale ribbons. San Aurelio County stretched north and west of Del Rio in limestone, mesquite, caliche roads, and long distances. Outsiders saw emptiness. Caleb saw signs, altered wire, fresh tracks, moved animals, and the habits people left behind. At 5:20, a hawk rose hard from the south pasture, and the cattle near the old south gate bunched north. Through field glasses, he caught a flash of glass on the unused service road. The gate led toward an abandoned limestone pit in Coyote Draw, a route that had mattered in an old case he preferred not to remember. He took his cell phone from his shirt pocket. One bar appeared, then disappeared. The ranch's landline had failed after a lightning strike in spring, and the repair company had promised 3 different Tuesdays. Caleb walked to the old radio shelf. The base unit was older than Annie, with a cracked plastic face and a microphone polished smooth by use. It connected to a repeater on a distant ridge when the repeater felt cooperative. He switched it on. Static filled the barn. Annie closed her book. "Grandpa." "Just checking." He turned the dial through ranch channels, county emergency traffic, and one private frequency that had not officially belonged to anyone in 20 years. Nothing but hiss. Then, buried beneath the static, a half-second burst of Spanish, clipped and urgent. A man's voice. Another voice answered too fast. Caleb did not understand every word, but he did not need to. Men under control spoke in full sentences. Men after a bad event spoke in fragments. He shut the radio off. "Get your things," he said. "We going home?" "You're calling your mom from the house. Tell her you're staying for supper." Annie frowned. "That's not getting my things." "It's what I asked." She slid off the counter. Caleb went outside and looked toward the southern ridge. The ranch dogs, Blue and Cricket, had not barked. That bothered him more than barking would have. Both dogs were under the stock trailer with their ears flat. He crouched slowly, ignoring the pull in his leg. "What did you smell?" Blue would not come out. Caleb stood and saw a thin line of dust beyond the ridge. Not one vehicle, at least 2. He could have put Annie in her car and sent her north, but the county road ran open for 3 miles before the first turn. If strangers were already watching the ranch, a lone sedan would be easy to stop. He could take the truck, but the truck sat behind the barn with a starter that sometimes required patience, and patience was useful only when no one else controlled the clock. He made a decision that looked like doing nothing. "House," he told Annie. Now. She heard the tone and did not argue. Inside, Caleb checked the back door, drew the curtains on the south windows, and told Annie to call her mother. The call connected, broke twice, then held. Annie said she was staying for supper. Caleb listened until he heard his daughter's voice answer. He did not take the phone. He did not want worry crossing a weak signal in pieces. In the kitchen, he filled the kettle. "You're making tea?" Annie asked. "Tea's useful." "For what?" "Tells me whether the power stays on." She stared at him. "That is the most old-person answer you've ever given." The lights flickered once before the kettle boiled. Caleb looked toward the barn. Somewhere south, an engine revved, then went quiet. He opened the pantry, took a brass key from behind canned tomatoes, and unlocked a weatherproof box beneath a mudroom floor panel. Inside were maps, spare radio batteries, an old silver badge, and a face-down photograph of two younger Texas Rangers beside a state vehicle. Caleb took the radio and batteries. Annie saw him turn over the photograph. "Who's that?" "A friend." One man was Caleb. The other was Tom Reyes, smiling with a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "You never show me any of this," Annie said. "Wasn't planning to today." He returned the badge and photograph and shut the box. The sound of metal touching wood seemed louder than it should. Headlights appeared through the south curtain. 3 sets. They moved slowly, without the hesitation of lost drivers. The first vehicle came over the cattle guard too fast and struck the welded pipe rail, making it ring. The second followed close behind. The third stopped on the far side of the yard, angled toward the road. Caleb watched through a slit in the curtain. Dark pickup, white utility truck, black SUV, mud up to the doors. The utility truck rode low over the rear axle. Too much weight. The SUV's left back window was covered from inside. The lead pickup had a fresh scrape down its passenger side, and one headlight cracked. None displayed company markings. One man got out, then another. Men who were afraid of an old farmer would spread out. These men did not. They believed the space already belonged to them. "Annie," Caleb said, "put your phone on silent." "Should I call 911? "Try. Don't speak unless they answer." She dialed. The screen showed searching. Caleb stepped onto the porch alone. The porch light came on above him, throwing a warm circle over the steps. June's light. The first man who approached was broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, and dressed in a dark jacket despite the heat. He moved with the deliberate calm of someone who wanted others to notice his calm. 2 men followed. A fourth remained near the white truck. The leader looked at Caleb's limp, the faded work shirt, the gray hair, and the empty hands. His mouth softened into something that was not a smile. "You Mercer?" he asked. "Depends who wants him." "I do." "Then I am." The man stopped at the foot of the steps. "Rafael Vargas." He waited as if the name should move the air. Caleb gave him nothing. Rafael's eyes narrowed. "Some call me El Cuchillo. Some call me when they're buying feed." Annie stood behind the screen door, phone hidden against her leg. Caleb heard no dispatcher, only the quiet tone of a failed connection. Rafael glanced at her. That was the first moment his calm changed, not because he was surprised to see a girl, because he had not expected a witness. "Your daughter?" "Granddaughter." "She lives here?" "No." Rafael looked back toward his men. A younger enforcer near the SUV shifted his weight. Thin face, nervous eyes. Mateo Cruz, though Caleb did not know the name yet. Mateo looked toward the west pasture, then the barn, then the dry creek line beyond it. He kept checking the same direction as if someone might come from there, or as if something had been left there. Caleb filed the habit away. Rafael climbed 1 step. "We need water, fuel, and a place to stay a few hours." Nearest motel is in town. This is not a request. Behind him, the man at the white truck opened a rear door. Caleb saw a boot on the floorboard and blood darkening the cuff of a pair of jeans. The door closed quickly. Wounded man. Failed run. Wait in the utility truck. A rear vehicle positioned to leave. This was not a robbery. It was an interruption. The crew had been moving something and had lost control of the route. Now they needed cover. Raphael believed a ranch with one old man could become cover. "You got diesel?" he asked. "Some." "Keys?" "Somewhere." Raphael climbed another step. "You will find them." Caleb looked past him at the lead pickup. Its right front tire had rolled over a scrap of bright blue plastic. No, not plastic. A feed inventory tag, folded and muddy, its punch corner caught beneath the tread. The color was wrong for anything sold at Mercer's. June had used yellow tags. Caleb had kept using yellow because changing would have felt like admitting she was gone. Blue tags came from only one place he knew. Valverde Agricultural Depot No. 4. Closed 14 years ago after a flood damaged the loading dock. Closed publicly anyway. In 2009, Caleb and Tom had found blue tags in a truck tied to a hidden crossing west of Coyote Draw. 3 days later, Tom was dead. A deputy's statement had changed, and the evidence chain had developed holes large enough to drive a convoy through. Caleb's eyes remained on Raphael. Inside, something old and cold woke without making him feel younger. "Water's at the barn," Caleb said. "Fuel tank's behind it." Raphael smiled. He thought obedience had begun. "Good. Then we're going to understand each other." He motioned, and 2 men came up the steps. Annie opened the screen door. "Don't touch him." Her voice shook, but she stepped outside anyway. "Go in," Caleb said. "No." Raphael looked amused. "Brave." "She's a kid," Caleb said. "Then teach her when to be quiet." The younger man, Mateo, approached the porch. Up close, Caleb saw dust on his sleeves, a shallow cut at his jaw, and a tremor in his left hand. Mateo looked at Annie, then away. Raphael noticed the glance. "Take the phones," he ordered. Mateo reached for Annie's. She pulled back. One of the other men grabbed her wrist. Caleb moved 1 step. The broad enforcer hit him in the ribs with a forearm. Pain folded him, but he did not fall. Annie shouted. Raphael's calm returned because domination had returned. "Knees," he said. Caleb straightened slowly. "I heard you." "Then knees." Caleb looked at Annie. He needed her to see choice, not surrender. "It's all right," he said. Then he lowered himself onto the dusty boards and down to the ground beside the porch steps. His bad leg resisted. The men laughed when he used the railing for support. Raphael took Annie's phone and dropped it under his boot. The screen cracked. Then he reached up with the butt of his handgun and smashed June's porch light. Glass fell around Caleb's shoulders. Annie made a sound as if something living had been hurt. Raphael leaned close. "Until sunrise, old man. This ranch is mine." Caleb looked at the blue feed tag under the tire, the broken gate chain dragging behind the white truck, and Mateo staring again toward the western pasture. He said nothing. He already knew the first mistake. They had brought their route onto his land. Raphael told his men to search the house and barn. He did it loudly, where Caleb and Annie could hear, because fear was most useful when it had an audience. 2 enforcers went inside. Drawers opened. Cabinet doors banged. In the yard, Mateo stood over Caleb with a pistol held too low and too tight. He did not look like a man who wanted to fire. He looked like a man afraid somebody else would make him. Caleb rubbed his ribs and watched the vehicles instead. The vehicles told a clearer story than Raphael did. His pickup still faced the main road, ready to leave first. The white truck blocked the fuel tank. The SUV sat where it could not turn cleanly. This was not a planned stay. It was a failed movement looking for cover. "Where's the diesel key?" Raphael asked. "Barn office." "Which drawer?" "Depends who searched last." Raphael crouched until they were eye level. "You think being old lets you be difficult?" "Being old makes drawers hard to remember." Raphael slapped him. Not hard enough to knock him down, hard enough to make Annie flinch. Caleb tasted blood where a tooth cut his cheek. He kept his eyes on Raphael's face. Cruel men often mistook stillness for fear because they could not imagine restraint. Raphael wanted anger. Anger would give him something to punish. Caleb gave him inconvenience instead. A searcher brought out Caleb's old shotgun and revolver. Raphael looked pleased. Caleb had kept only ordinary ranch guns. With Annie present and armed men controlling the yard, reaching for one would not be courage. It would be vanity. Raphael laid the revolver on the porch rail. "You used to be police?" "Everybody out here owns an old gun." "That's not what I asked." "Then ask better." Raphael's smile vanished. He stood. "Put him in the barn." Annie stepped between Caleb and Mateo. "I'm going with him." "You stay in the house," Raphael said. "No." "Annie," Caleb said. She looked at him. "Do what he says." "He broke Grandma's light." "I saw." "He hit you." "Saw that too." He held her gaze. "House." She understood the thing beneath the word. Distance could be protection. She went inside slowly, looking back once. Caleb let Mateo pull him to his feet. The younger man's grip was not rough. That mattered, not because kindness could be trusted, but because hesitation could be used. They walked toward the barn. Caleb counted people without moving his lips. Raphael, Mateo, the broad man who had hit him. One by the SUV. One searching the house. One at the white truck. 6 mobile men, plus the wounded one. Maybe another hidden with the cargo, but the suspension and movement suggested weight, not a passenger. He also counted what was missing. No one watched the north fence. No one checked the pump house. No one climbed for a view. These were roadmen using a ranch, not fieldmen who understood one. Inside the barn, the broad enforcer found the diesel key in less than a minute. Caleb had left it in plain sight on a nail-marked diesel, because hiding common things invited people to tear apart uncommon ones. The enforcer laughed. "Old man forgot his own barn." "Looks that way," Caleb said. The man took 2 red fuel cans and went outside. Mateo stayed. He kept glancing at the radio shelf. Caleb noticed a white powder of dried mud around Mateo's boots. Not local caliche. Fine clay from the lower draw, where water sometimes stood after storms. The dry creek bed again. "Your friend in the truck needs a doctor," Caleb said. Mateo's eyes snapped toward him. "No one needs anything." "Then he's taking a strange kind of nap. Be quiet. Blood on his cuff. Breathing fast. You keep checking the creek because that's where things went wrong." Mateo raised the pistol. The tremor returned. "I said quiet." Caleb sat on a feed sack and let silence work until a cough came from the white truck. Mateo looked toward it and said, "Luis." Before catching himself, Caleb quietly named what he had seen. The low truck, the blood, the failed route, and Mateo's constant glances toward the draw. "How?" Mateo demanded. Caleb shrugged. "Farming." The answer gave Mateo nowhere to push. He grabbed Caleb's shirt. "Who are you?" "Man whose feed you're standing on." Raphael entered before Mateo could ask again. "Problem?" "No." Mateo released Caleb. Raphael looked from one to the other. Suspicion moved behind his eyes. Caleb had planted only a seed, but frightened crews watered their own doubts. "The old man says Luis needs a doctor," Mateo said. Raphael turned slowly. Why would you tell him Luis's name? I didn't. He said it. I heard you outside, Caleb answered. He had not. Raphael studied him. You hear too much. Barn carries sound. Then maybe you should spend the night somewhere quieter. Raphael walked to the radio shelf and switched on the old bass unit. Static hissed. This work. Sometimes. Who can hear it? Ranchers, county road crews. Depends on the channel. Raphael pulled the microphone cord until it stretched. You called anyone? You were watching me. Before. No. That answer was true in the narrowest way. Caleb had tried nothing before they arrived, because the situation had not yet shown its shape. Raphael turned the dial. A distant voice broke through, then faded. Kill it, he told Mateo. Mateo yanked the power cord from the wall. Caleb watched where it fell. The radio had a backup battery in the cabinet below. Mateo did not know. More important, the old unit transmitted on a reserve setting if the side switch was held while power returned. Caleb had used that quirk during storms and once during a manhunt. The signal was weak, but Sheriff Mara Ellison still monitored the old rural emergency band because Caleb had trained her to listen to channels other people considered dead. He did not need a conversation. He needed one phrase, one call sign, and a reason for Mara to keep deputies back until she understood. Raphael pointed at the tack room. Sit him in there. The tack room had one door, one high window, saddles along the walls, and an old frame photograph above the cabinet. Caleb felt his stomach tighten. He had forgotten the photograph was there because memory hid best in familiar places. It showed 6 Rangers after a rescue operation near Eagle Pass. Caleb stood in the center, younger, leaner, hat low over his eyes. Tom Reyes stood beside him. The brass plate beneath the frame read, Captain Caleb Mercer, Company D, and Ranger Tom Reyes. Raphael did not look up. Mateo did. His eyes paused on the frame, but a layer of dust and weak light kept the words hidden. Caleb sat on a wooden chair. Bring the girl, Raphael said. Caleb's head lifted. You said house. I changed my mind. She isn't part of this. Everyone on the property is part of it. Then leave her where you can see the front road. Raphael considered. Caleb had offered control, not mercy. Men like Raphael trusted control. Porch, Raphael said. She stays on the porch. He left. Mateo remained at the door. You shouldn't talk to him like that, Mateo said. How should I talk? Like you're scared. Would it help? Mateo did not answer. Through the window, Caleb saw Annie brought outside by the man who had searched the house. She carried herself stiffly, trying not to show fear. Raphael put her in a porch chair beneath the broken light. Glass still glittered on the boards. He wanted Caleb to see her, and wanted her to see Caleb. Humiliation was becoming leverage. Caleb looked around the tack room. The wall behind him shared wiring with the radio shelf. Behind a loose service panel, Caleb could reach the unit's backup cable and reserve switch, but only if Mateo looked away. Luis gave him that chance. A cry came from the white truck, and the men dragged the wounded driver into the barn. Luis was pale, sweating, and barely able to stand. When he collapsed, Caleb stopped them from using medicated trough water, directed them to clean towels and the first aid box, and helped keep pressure on the wound. He needs an ambulance, Caleb said. Raphael placed a pistol against his shoulder. He needs to survive until sunrise. Those are different things. Make them the same. While Caleb worked, the crew moved sealed bins and canvas-wrapped bundles from the low truck into the storage bay. He memorized 4 digits stenciled on one bin and saw red clay beneath another. He did not guess at the contents. Evidence was strongest when it existed without a story forced onto it. Luis opened his eyes. Where? Ranch, Mateo said. Whose? Doesn't matter, Raphael cut in. Luis looked at Caleb. South Gate, he whispered. They knew. Raphael ordered him quiet. Caleb watched the leader's thumb rub the pistol grip. Someone had known the route, or known where law enforcement would be. He remembered Deputy Wade Harlan visiting 2 weeks earlier and asking whether the South Gate still opened toward the old pit road. Who knew? Caleb asked. About your route. Raphael told him pain made men weak. Sometimes it makes them honest, Caleb said. A radio in one of the trucks suddenly reported units moving north of Highway 90. Raphael and Mateo hurried outside. For the first time, the tack room door stood unwatched. Caleb crossed to the loose panel, connected the backup cable, and pressed the reserve switch. The emergency pickup was weak, but Sheriff Mara Ellison still monitored the old rural band. Caleb leaned close and spoke in the calm rhythm of a routine ranch report. Mercer 7 to San Aurelio. Cattle loose at South Gate. Hold the north road. Repeat. Hold the north road. Mercer 7. He disconnected the cable, replaced the panel, and returned to the chair before Mateo came back. The transmission had lasted 8 seconds. It might not have cleared the ridge. It might have been swallowed by static. But if Mara heard the call sign, she would remember what it meant. Mercer 7 had not been used since the night Tom Reyes died. Back then, it had meant officer in danger, compromised route, do not approach on the obvious road. Caleb replaced the panel and returned to the chair as Mateo came back inside. What did you do? Mateo asked. Stood up. Why? Leg cramps. Mateo looked at the dead radio. The cord still lay unplugged. He stared at Caleb for another second, then turned away. 30 miles north, Sheriff Mara Ellison heard the rural band transmission break through a budget call. Mercer 7. South Gate. Hold the north road. The old call sign had not been used since Tom Reyes died. Caleb had trained Mara when she was a young state officer, teaching her that land did not lie and panic traveled faster than facts. He would not use Mercer 7 for loose cattle. Trace it, she told dispatch. The weak hit pointed toward Mercer Ranch. She ordered 2 state units to move without lights or sirens and warned everyone off the obvious north approach. Then she asked for Deputy Wade Harlan. He checked out 10 minutes ago, the dispatcher said. Said he was following a vehicle report near Coyote Draw. Did we have one? No, ma'am. Mara looked at the map. The call sign had opened a door, and Harlan had stepped through it. At the ranch, Raphael returned from the yard with anger tucked tightly behind his eyes. The truck radio had told him law enforcement units were moving, but it had not told him why. Uncertainty bothered him more than a visible enemy. A visible enemy could be threatened. Uncertainty made every person in the room look disloyal. Who has a phone? He demanded. No one answered. I asked a question. The broad enforcer, whose name Caleb learned was Nestor, held up a cheap black phone. Only this. Raphael snatched it and checked the screen. No calls. Signal is bad. Signal was good enough before. He looked at Mateo. Yours. Dead. Show me. Mateo handed it over. The screen was dark. Raphael pressed the power button and got nothing. He looked toward Caleb. And the old man's. We took it, Nestor said. Where? Kitchen. Raphael sent him to retrieve it. Caleb sat beside Luis, keeping one folded towel in place and watching the wounded man's face. Luis had stopped shivering, which could mean improvement or something worse. His breathing had become shallower. He needs a hospital, Caleb said. You said that, Raphael replied. Time changed. Sunrise didn't. His body doesn't care about your schedule. Raphael leaned over Luis. You hear me? You stay awake. Luis's eyelids moved. Water, he whispered. Caleb dampened a cloth and touched it to his lips. Raphael watched with open suspicion, as if mercy itself might be a trick. Why help him? Because he's hurt. He came here with me. Still hurt. Maybe he would kill you. Maybe. Caleb looked up. He's not doing it right now. Raphael paced toward the tack room. He stopped beneath the old photograph. This time, the barn floodlight spilled through the doorway and struck the glass. Raphael saw hats first, then badges, then the brass plate. His face changed by degrees. He reached up, lifted the frame from its hook, and wiped dust with his sleeve. Captain Caleb Mercer, he read. The barn went quiet. Mateo looked at Caleb. Nestor returned from the house with the phone and stopped when he heard the name. The older driver near the SUV, a narrow man with gray in his beard named Esteban Ruiz, came closer, his eyes fixed on the photograph. Mercer, he said, not loudly. Raphael turned. You know him? Esteban did not answer at once. He studied the younger Caleb in the ranger hat, then the older man seated beside Luis. Stories, he said, from years ago. What stories? A ranger captain. Border cases. What about him? Esteban looked uncomfortable. He found routes nobody could find. People said if Mercer saw one tire mark, he could put a whole crew in court. Nestor laughed, but it sounded forced. Court. He didn't make men disappear in the desert, Esteban said. He made them disappear into courtrooms, drivers, brokers, deputies, whole chains. Raphael's eyes returned to Caleb. You were a ranger. Caleb did not answer. Captain? Still nothing. Raphael stepped closer. Why didn't you say? You didn't ask better. Mateo stared at him as if the old man had changed shape. Caleb had not. His work shirt was still dusty. His cheek was swelling. His bad leg still hurt. The only thing that changed was what the criminals believed those details meant. Raphael picked up the framed photograph and carried it to the workbench. He looked at Tom. Who's this? Caleb's voice went flatter. Tom Reyes. Ranger 2? Yes. Where is he? Dead. How? Caleb watched Raphael, then Mateo. Trusted the wrong deputy. The words landed where he intended. Mateo's eyes flicked toward Raphael. Raphael noticed. What is that supposed to mean? Means trust should cost something. You think one of my men betrayed me? I think Luis said someone knew your route. I think your radio knows where deputies are before the sheriff does. I think you came through a gate nobody uses because somebody told you it was safe. He looked toward the yard. And I think somebody is still telling you things. Raphael set the frame down hard. You talk like you know my business. I know frightened men. You think I'm frightened? You keep asking. Nestor took one step toward Caleb, but Raphael raised a hand. The leader wanted to prove he was not affected. Violence would prove the opposite. Caleb let the contradiction tighten around him. Raphael turned to Mateo. Why do you keep looking west? Mateo blinked. I don't. You do. Road is west. The road is north. The draw goes west. Raphael moved close. What is in the draw? Nothing. Luis said they knew. You keep looking at the draw. The old man says trust should cost something. Mateo's face drained. I didn't tell anyone. Then why are you nervous? Because the run went bad. Because Luis is bleeding. Because we are sitting on a ranch with a ranger. The last word came out before Mateo could stop it. Everyone heard the fear in it. Raphael slapped him. Mateo staggered against a saddle rack. He is an old farmer, Raphael said. He was a ranger, Esteban corrected quietly. Raphael turned on him. Was. Caleb watched the hierarchy crack by a hair. Not enough to break. Enough to make the men listen for weakness. Outside, Annie still sat on the porch, but she had stopped looking at the barn. Her attention stayed on Raphael's pickup. The blue feed tag remained caught beneath the right front tire. She had seen Caleb study it earlier. She did not know what it meant. She knew it mattered. When the man guarding her walked to the yard pump, Annie slid the shard of porch glass from beneath her shoe and held it against her palm. She did not intend to use it on anyone. Her grandfather had once told her that tools were answers to specific questions, and a sharp edge was usually better for rope than for people. The plastic zip tie around her wrists had loosened because Nestor had secured it in a hurry. She worked the glass carefully along one side. Each movement was small enough to hide against her jeans. Her heart beat so hard she worried the guard could hear it. In the barn, Raphael ordered Caleb searched again. Nestor emptied his pockets onto the workbench. Folding knife, handkerchief, 2 fence staples, coins, a small notebook, pencil stub, and the brass key to the floor box. Raphael flipped through the notebook. Feed orders, fence measurements, a phone number for the veterinarian. Nothing useful. "Where is your badge?" Raphael asked. "Retired." "That's not an answer. It is where I left it." "House." Caleb said nothing. Raphael picked up the brass key. "What does this open?" "Old lock." "Which old lock?" Caleb looked at him. Raphael smiled. "Now you remember your own words." He sent Nestor to search the house again. Caleb knew the floor box would be found. The badge would reveal nothing they did not now know, but the maps might. One map showed every gate and stock trail on the ranch. Another showed old law enforcement search grids near Coyote Draw. He did not want Raphael studying either. Yet he also knew men under pressure saw what confirmed their plans. If Raphael found a route drawn in Caleb's own hand, he might believe it was safe. Caleb had marked the western cattle path years ago as an evacuation line during wildfires. It curved behind the barn, crossed a shallow branch of the draw, and rejoined the old pit road. To outsiders, it looked like a hidden exit. In reality, the path narrowed between 2 limestone shelves, passed through 3 separate gates, and fell into a radio shadow before rising beneath the county ridge. Caleb could control movement there without controlling people. He could make vehicles stop, separate, turn, and expose themselves. He could not force Raphael to choose it. He could only make every other choice look worse. Nestor returned carrying the weatherproof box. He dumped its contents onto the workbench. The silver badge struck wood and spun. Annie, visible through the barn doors, saw it glint. Raphael picked it up. The leather was cracked. The metal still carried the words, "Texas Rangers." "Captain," Raphael said, "you kept it." "Didn't know retirement required throwing it away." Raphael unfolded the maps. "What are these?" "Land." "I can see that." "Then you're improving." Nestor struck Caleb in the shoulder. Louis stirred and groaned. Raphael ignored him, studying the maps. His finger followed the main road north, then the south gate, then the western cattle path. "This goes to the pit road?" "Eventually." "How long?" "Depends what you're driving." "Truck." "Depends which truck." "The white one." Caleb looked at the low suspension. "Longer than you want." "Why?" "Narrow gates." "Can they open?" "Most things can." Raphael pointed at a line crossing Coyote Draw. "This?" "Dry Creek." "Passable." "Tonight." "Where does it come out?" "County Ridge." Raphael looked toward the yard radio. "And North Road." "Straight to Highway 90. He said it neutrally. Raphael wanted North to be a trap because law enforcement was reported there. Caleb did not need to push. "How many houses west?" Raphael asked. "None for 9 miles." That was true. Cameras. Not mine. Sheriff patrols. Ask whoever's feeding you radio traffic. Mateo looked down. Esteban looked toward Rafael's phone. Suspicion moved again. Rafael folded the map and put it in his jacket. We leave before sunrise. Luis won't make that ride, Caleb said. He will. Not over the west path. Rafael turned. You trying to keep us here? Trying to keep him alive. Maybe you want us on the North Road. Maybe I want you off my ranch. Rafael's eyes sharpened. You called someone. Caleb did not move. You were alone in the tack room. Mateo was at the door. For a minute he wasn't. Mateo looked up. Rafael faced him. You left him? Luis fell. How long? Seconds. Enough for what? The radio was unplugged. Enough for what? Mateo had no answer. Rafael walked to the base unit and ripped it from the shelf. The backup battery cable pulled free. He saw it. The radio crashed onto the floor. You use this. Caleb said nothing. Rafael kicked the cabinet open and found the reserve switch. He did not know how it worked, but he no longer needed proof. He grabbed Caleb by the shirt and hauled him partly off the chair. Pain shot through Caleb's leg. Who did you call? No one. Who? Static. Rafael punched him in the ribs where Nestor had struck earlier. Caleb fell against the workbench. Annie stood on the porch. The guard ordered her to sit. She did not. Rafael hit Caleb again, lower this time. Caleb held the bench and refused to fall. Who did you call? Mercer 7, Esteban said. Everyone turned. What? Rafael demanded. Esteban pointed at the broken radio. Old call sign. I heard stories. Ranger distress code. How would you know? My uncle drove freight. He talked. What did the code mean? Esteban looked at Caleb. I don't know. Caleb straightened, breathing carefully. Blood from his cheek had dried along his jaw. It means cattle loose. Rafael pulled Annie from the porch himself. The half-cut zip tie snapped when he grabbed her, but she kept her wrists together so no one noticed. He marched her into the barn and put a gun near her shoulder. What does it mean? He asked Caleb. Caleb's vision narrowed. Every instinct wanted movement. Every year of experience ordered stillness. A hostage watched the rescuer's face. Panic could spread from him to Annie faster than any plan. He looked at her. You all right? I'm fine, she said, though tears stood in her eyes. He broke Grandma's light. We'll fix it. Rafael pressed the gun harder. What did you tell them? South Gate. Hold North Road. Rafael blinked. He had expected a lie. Why hold the North Road? Because Annie is here. You warned them not to come. I warned them not to rush. Why? Because men who rush get people killed. The answer unsettled Rafael. He had imagined Caleb summoning force. Instead, the old ranger had limited it. That sounded less like fear than control. You think you are running this? Rafael asked. No. You think because you had a badge is on the table. You think your sheriff will save you. I think she'll think before she moves. She. Caleb regretted the word only after it left. Rafael caught it. Mara Ellison, he said. That's your sheriff. The name had appeared in local reports. You know her? Caleb stayed silent. Rafael smiled. You trained her. Mateo looked toward the doors again. We should go. Not yet, Rafael said. Now, Mateo insisted. If he called her, he told her to hold. Maybe that is code. Everything is code to you now? Rafael snapped. Because he makes you afraid? Mateo looked at Caleb. He knew the draw. He knew Luis. He knew the route went bad. He guessed. He knew the clay on my boots. Silence. Raphael's head turned. What clay? Mateo realized he had exposed another detail. Nothing. Caleb spoke before Raphael could press. Lower draw holds fine clay in shaded pockets. That's where he walked. He keeps looking west because he left something there, saw something there, or is afraid somebody followed. Mateo's breathing quickened. Stop. Tell him, Caleb said. Stop talking. Tell Raphael why Luis said they knew. I don't know. You know more than he does. Raphael aimed his pistol at Mateo. What do you know? Mateo stared at the weapon. Harlan changed the route. The name entered the barn like smoke. Caleb did not react. Annie did. She knew Deputy Wade Harlan. He had spoken at her school about safety. He had eaten peach cobbler on this porch. Her face showed disbelief before she could hide it. Raphael noticed Caleb instead. Who is Harlan? He asked, testing. Deputy, Caleb said. Your deputy. County. You know him. Enough. Raphael looked at Mateo. Keep talking. Wade said patrols would be north. He said use the depot road, cross the lower draw, then come through this ranch if there was trouble. You told him about Luis? No. Who did? I don't know. Who knew we changed vehicles? I don't know. Raphael pressed the pistol against Mateo's chest. Wrong answer. Mateo's voice cracked. He called me before the run. Said there was a state unit near the old route. Said turn at Depot 4. Caleb looked at the blue tag outside. Depot 4. The closed agricultural supply yard. The same place connected to Tom's last case. Why would a deputy send you there? Caleb asked. Raphael snapped, Quiet. But Mateo answered because fear had chosen a new direction. Storage. Harlan uses it. For what? I don't know. We don't ask. Blue inventory tags. Mateo looked at him. What? Tags on feed pallets. Blue. Maybe. You loaded there tonight. Some. Raphael struck Mateo with the pistol, not hard enough to break skin, hard enough to stop him. You say nothing else. Caleb had what he needed. A name, route, depot, and living witnesses. Not enough for court alone. Enough to direct a lawful search. The tag beneath the tire could connect physical evidence to the depot. Cargo numbers could connect the truck. The radio leak could connect Harlan. But only if the evidence survived, and only if Annie survived. Justice was a future problem. The next minute still belonged to Raphael. Outside, an engine approached from the north road. Every man turned. Headlights swept the yard. Raphael dragged Annie against him. Nestor raised a rifle. Mateo moved behind a post. Caleb listened. One vehicle. Engine idle uneven. County fleet maintenance had been poor for years. He recognized the rattle before the unit entered the yard. Wade Harlan's patrol SUV rolled over the cattle guard with its lights dark. The deputy stepped out wearing body armor over his uniform. He carried no long gun. His right hand rested near his holster. Raphael, he called. We need to move. Raphael did not lower his weapon. You said no police. I am not police tonight. What happened at the draw? State team showed early. How? I don't know. Luis says they knew. Luis is hurt and scared. Mateo says you changed the route. Harlan looked at Mateo with naked anger. Mateo talks too much. The old man called his sheriff. Harlan's face changed. How? Radio. What did he say? Mercer 7. Harlan went still. He looked into the barn and saw Caleb beside the workbench. For 1 second, the deputy looked younger and much more frightened. "Captain," he said. Caleb's voice was quiet. "Wade. Didn't know you were involved. My ranch. This wasn't supposed to happen here. Things keep happening where you send them." Harlan stepped into the barn. "You need to understand. This got bigger than county work. Corruption usually says that when it wants to sound important. You don't know what you're talking about. Depot 4, lower draw, south gate." Caleb nodded toward the cargo. "Blue tags." Harlan's eyes flicked toward the truck. It was small, fast, and enough. Raphael saw it. "What blue tags?" he asked. Harlan ignored him. "Where is your sheriff?" "Thinking." "Where are units?" "Thinking too." Harlan turned to Raphael. "We take the west path. Now. North Road is being watched." Caleb let his eyes rest on the map corner sticking from Raphael's jacket. The path had become Harlan's idea, which made it better. Caleb warned that the loaded white truck would struggle at the third gate. Harlan said he had driven the trail and accused Caleb of delaying them. "I am," Caleb replied. "Luis needs an ambulance. Annie needs to leave. You need time to invent a story." Harlan looked at the old photograph of Caleb and Tom. His eyes moved away too quickly. "You remember him," Caleb said. "Everyone remembers Reyes. You were a reserve dispatcher the night he died. Somebody redirected our backup to the wrong crossing. That was years ago. You logged the call, then changed your statement." Harlan's jaw tightened. "I was 22. I was scared." "Of who?" Raphael cut off the exchange. "We leave west." "The girl stays," Caleb said. "The girl comes," Raphael answered. "You two. You know the land. You keep Luis alive, and she makes sure you cooperate." Caleb looked at Annie. Her wrists appeared tied, but she gave the smallest shake of her head. The cut restraint was hidden between her palms. "All right," he said. "No," Annie protested. "He can barely walk. He needs his cane." Caleb did not use a cane. Her eyes flicked toward June's old walking stick by the door, then toward Raphael's pickup. The blue feed tag still protruded beneath the tire. Caleb understood. Mateo was sent to fetch the stick. Annie pointed toward the truck and said he had the wrong one. When everyone looked down, she bent as if searching and swept the blue tag into her sleeve. Raphael grabbed her. "No games." She held her wrists together and said nothing. Caleb saw a corner of blue disappear at her cuff. The clue was no longer trapped beneath a vehicle, but now it rode on a hostage who might be searched. Raphael ordered the convoy arranged. Harlan wanted his patrol unit first, arguing that its radio would guide them. Raphael no longer trusted him. "Leave it," he said. Harlan hesitated, knowing an abandoned county vehicle at the ranch would prove he had been there. Raphael noticed. "You don't want your car seen with us." "I don't want it stuck." "Then ride with me." Suspicion did Caleb's work. Harlan left the marked unit behind and took the front passenger seat of Raphael's pickup. Nestor drove. Raphael sat in back with Annie. Mateo drove the white truck with Luis in front and Caleb between them. Esteban followed in the SUV, and the last enforcer took a ranch truck carrying fuel and one cargo bin. Too many vehicles entered a path built for cattle and weather. Too many frightened men entered it with different reasons to escape. They had 7 armed men if Harlan counted, 1 wounded man, Annie, and Caleb. Too many vehicles for the path. Too many doubts for the crew. Caleb climbed into the white truck slowly. Under his hand, the doorframe carried fresh scratches and a smear of blue paint that matched Depot 4 equipment. He looked at the cargo behind the seats. Sealed bins, canvas bundles, and a metal case. He could smell fertilizer, engine oil, and wet clay. He did not identify contents. He memorized condition. Evidence had no need for drama. Mateo started the engine. "Which way?" he asked. "Behind the barn." "Then, follow the pickup. Harlan knows. Harlan knows enough to get lost." Mateo gripped the wheel. "You want us to get stuck. I want Annie safe. Raphael won't hurt her." Caleb turned his head. "You believe that?" Mateo did not answer. "He put a gun on you 10 minutes ago," Caleb said. "He is under pressure. Pressure reveals. It doesn't invent. You are trying to turn me." "No. I'm telling you to decide what you won't do before somebody orders it." Luis moaned. Caleb checked the cloth at his side. "And decide soon." The convoy moved behind the barn. As the pickup passed the floodlight pole, Caleb looked up at the old fixture. 3 floodlights covered the working pens. A 4th pointed west toward the first gate. Their switches were in the pump house, but an old photoelectric control caused them to cycle if power dropped and returned. Caleb had never fixed it, because June said the blinking lights made coyotes nervous. Tonight, he needed a reason for one of Raphael's men to leave a vehicle and a moment when Annie was not being watched. The pump house sat 40 yards ahead. "Stop," Caleb said. Mateo looked over. "Why?" "First gate's chained." "I see it. Keys in pump house." "Raphael has keys." "Not that one." Mateo radioed the pickup. Raphael ordered the convoy to stop. Dust settled around the headlights. Harlan got out with Raphael. "I can cut it," Harlan said. "Chain is hardened," Caleb replied through the window. "Cutter's in pump house with the key." Harlan glared. "You keep a hardened chain on a cattle gate?" "Cattle don't care." Raphael ordered Mateo to get the key. Caleb said, "He won't know which." "Then you go." Nestor opened Caleb's door. "Slow," Caleb said. "I know," Nestor replied. Caleb climbed down. His leg nearly folded when his boot hit ground. The earlier blows had tightened every muscle around the old injury. He used June's walking stick. Annie watched from the pickup ahead. Caleb met her eyes only once. The pump house door opened with a latch. Inside, tools hung in rows. A breaker box sat on the wall. Keys hung beneath labels. Caleb took the gate key. While Nestor looked outside, he rested his hand on the main light breaker. "What are you doing?" Nestor asked. "Getting my balance." "Get the key." Caleb did. As he turned, his shoulder bumped the breaker down. The pump stopped. The yard lights behind them went dark. Nestor swore. "What happened?" "Old wiring." "Fix it." "Gate first." From the vehicles, Raphael shouted. Nestor grabbed Caleb's arm. "Lights." Caleb raised the breaker. The floodlights came back one by one. The west-facing light flashed twice, then held. Far on the ridge, Mara saw the pattern. Dark, return, west light cycling. It could have been faulty wiring. It could have been a signal. Caleb had once taught her never to trust a single clue. Then he had taught her to respect 3 clues pointing the same direction. Old call sign, hold north, west light. "They're moving west," she said. The thermal operator confirmed engines shifting behind the barn. Mara keyed the radio but did not transmit. Not yet. At the gate, Caleb unlocked the chain. Raphael stepped from the pickup with Annie. "From now on," he said, "no stops unless I say." "Then you'll hit the second gate," Caleb replied. "What second gate?" "Around the bend." Harlan unfolded the map. "He's right." Raphael glared. "Why didn't you say?" "Because we stopped at the first." The crew's confidence thinned again. They moved through the gate. Caleb locked it behind the last vehicle when Nestor ordered him to leave it open. Habit, Caleb said. Unlock it. Keys with Mateo. It was not. Caleb had slipped it into his boot. Nestor cursed, but Raphael told him to move. The closed gate now divided the ranch from the path. It would slow anyone following, including law enforcement, but Mara would not follow blindly. More important, it prevented the last vehicle from turning back without stopping. Each gate would make the convoy a line instead of a group. Lines could be observed. Groups could surround. Caleb climbed back beside Mateo and Luis. The white truck rolled after Raphael's pickup into darkness. Mesquite branches scraped both sides. The path dropped toward Coyote Draw. Ahead, red taillights appeared and vanished around curves. Behind them, the SUV's headlights bounced. Mateo whispered, "What happens at the draw?" "Depends who tells the truth." "About what?" "Why you keep looking there?" Mateo's hands tightened. "I saw a body." Caleb turned. "When?" "Tonight. Near the depot road. We changed route. There was a truck burned by the wash. Harlan said keep moving." "Whose body?" "I don't know. Man in plain clothes." "Law enforcement?" "Maybe." "Alive?" "I don't know." "Why didn't you tell Raphael?" "Because Harlan said the state team did it. Said somebody was hunting us." Caleb considered. A burned vehicle could explain panic, but Harlan's story sounded designed to keep the crew dependent on his guidance. "Did you see fire?" "Smoke." "Flames?" "No." "Then maybe the truck wasn't burned." Mateo looked at him. "What?" "Maybe it was staged to close your route. Maybe nobody was dead." "Why?" "To make you take Depot 4. To make you carry something for someone. To make you come here." Mateo glanced toward the cargo. "Raphael said the load was ours." "Did you see it loaded?" "No. Harlan's people had it ready." Caleb looked at the bins behind him. The crew may not know everything it carried. Corruption layered itself that way. Each person knew enough to be guilty and not enough to control the truth. Luis opened his eyes. "Mateo," he whispered. "I'm here. Don't trust Wade." Mateo looked at Caleb, then back to the road. "Why?" "He left us." Luis coughed. "At the checkpoint. He said go. Then lights." "Save your breath," Caleb said. Luis gripped his sleeve. "Blue room," he whispered. "Depot. Files." Caleb leaned closer. "What files?" "Names." His eyes closed again. Mateo's face had gone pale. "What blue room?" he asked. "Depot office," Luis murmured. "Wade keeps papers." Harlan had not merely leaked routes. He may have kept records, leverage, or payment accounts. Tom's old case could be in that room. The thought struck Caleb harder than he expected. For 17 years, he had told himself Tom died because a frightened dispatcher made a bad choice under pressure. Then statements changed. Evidence vanished. A ranch owner recanted. Caleb investigated until supervisors told him grief had become bias. He retired 2 years later, not because he stopped believing in law, but because he no longer trusted the people carrying pieces of it. Now the same road, same depot, and same kind of leak had returned. He wanted answers. Wanting them was dangerous. Answers could make Annie secondary if he let the past lead. He looked through the windshield at the pickup carrying her. Tom's memory spoke in the voice Caleb remembered from long drives. "Don't chase ghosts while living people need you." Caleb rested a hand on Luis's shoulder. "Stay with us." The path descended. Radio signals vanished beneath the limestone shelf. Raphael's pickup disappeared around the next bend. For 40 seconds, each vehicle was alone in the dark. In the radio shadow, Raphael believed he had gained privacy. Caleb knew he had gained separation. The pickup reached the floor of Coyote Draw first. and stopped at the second gate, where two limestone shoulders narrowed the trail. Harlan got out with the map. Raphael kept Annie in the back seat, one hand around her arm. The white truck rolled to a stop 30 yards behind. The SUV stopped behind it. The last ranch truck remained out of sight around the bend. No driver could see the whole convoy. Mateo stared at the gate. Why aren't they moving? Chain, Caleb said. Another key? No. Gate sags. Has to be lifted. You planned that? Ground planned it. Mateo looked at him. What do I do? The question was no longer about the gate. Caleb answered the one beneath it. When a choice comes, protect the girl. Then tell the truth. Raphael shouted for Caleb. He climbed down with the walking stick and went forward. The draw held cool air and the smell of dust. Annie sat rigidly in the pickup. As Caleb approached, she pressed her cuff against the window, showing the smallest edge of blue. He gave no sign. Harlan pointed at the gate. Open it. Need 2 people. Nestor came over. Caleb showed them where the warped hinge bound against stone. He made no secret method of it. He simply slowed the moment until the vehicles idled in separate pockets of darkness. Above the draw, the old repeater caught a brief signal from Harlan's abandoned patrol radio still keyed by a loose microphone in the ranch yard. Mara's team heard voices from the barn recording. Depot 4, West Path. The girl comes. More than suspicion now. Evidence. Mara sent units to both exits of the pit road and ordered the nearest ambulance to stage out of sight. No entry until we see the hostage clear, she said. At the gate, it finally swung. Raphael ordered Caleb into the pickup with Annie. Mateo handles Luis. Luis is worse. Then he dies in the truck. Mateo heard that through the open window. His face changed. Raphael saw it and raised his weapon. You have a problem? No. Then drive. The pickup crossed the gate. Caleb climbed into the rear beside Annie. Raphael sat across from them, pistol low. Harlan rode in front. The path rose toward the repeater ridge. You know, Raphael said to Caleb, I thought men like you were supposed to be brave. Brave enough for what? Fight. With my granddaughter beside me? Raphael smiled. So she makes you weak. She makes my choices matter. The answer silenced him. As the pickup reached the narrow rise, the old handheld radio hidden beneath Caleb's shirt crackled. He had taken it from the floor box and tucked it under his belt before the first search, where age and loose clothing had concealed it. He had not used it because transmission inside the ranch would expose him. Now the ridge gave him one chance. Mara's voice came through faintly. Mercer 7. West exits held. We hear you. Raphael froze. Harlan turned. Caleb did not reach for the radio. Annie did. With her free hand, she pulled it from beneath his shirt and threw it out the open window. Raphael lunged toward her, but the sudden movement made him lose sight of Caleb. Caleb caught Raphael's wrist with both hands and forced the gun away from Annie. There was no graceful fight. The pickup swerved. Harlan shouted. Nestor braked hard. Caleb's bad leg struck the floor. Annie ducked and opened the door before the vehicle fully stopped. Run downhill, Caleb shouted. She ran toward the white truck, not into open country. Mateo saw her. He had his pistol in hand. Raphael yelled, Take her! Mateo raised the weapon, then lowered it. He stepped between Annie and the pickup. No, he said. One word broke the crew more completely than a shot. Raphael climbed out furious. Harlan drew his weapon. From behind, Esteban stopped the SUV and refused to advance. The last driver reversed, found the first gate closed, and abandoned the ranch truck. Headlights pointed in conflicting directions, filling the draw with dust and moving shadows. Caleb got out slowly, keeping the pickup between Annie and Raphael. "Mateo," he called, "bring her to Luis." Mateo backed toward the white truck with Annie. Raphael aimed at him. "You betray me? You were leaving Luis. Luis is dead weight." Luis, barely conscious, heard it. "Mateo," he whispered. That was enough. Mateo opened the passenger door and helped Annie behind the engine block. Caleb did not celebrate. A frightened man could change twice. "Raphael," Harlan said, "we need to go." "Because of him." Raphael pointed at Caleb. "He has nothing. He has a radio. He threw it away. They heard us. Then you fix it." Harlan looked toward the ridge. Red and blue lights appeared far beyond the draw, not charging, simply closing both roads. His shoulders sagged. "You told them west," he said to Caleb. "The floodlights did," Caleb replied. Harlan understood. "You built this. You chose every road." Raphael looked from the blocked ridge to the closed gate behind the convoy. "Open the south side," he ordered. "There is no south side," Caleb said. "The draw walls climb there. Then north. State units. Back. Locked gate and your own trucks." Raphael's face changed as the ranch became what it had always been. Not a maze, not a trap, but land with limits he had ignored. Caleb had never controlled the men. He had let distance, gates, fear, and their own decisions separate them. Sirens remained distant. Mara still refused to rush. Her voice carried from a loudspeaker beyond the ridge. "Raphael Vargas, Wade Harlan, we know Annie Mercer is in the draw. Keep weapons down. Medical help is ready for Luis Ortega. No one needs to die here." Harlan stared toward the sound. "She knows names." Caleb said, "You said plenty at the barn." "Recordings?" "Probably." Harlan looked at Raphael. "We surrender." Raphael laughed once. "You surrender." He grabbed Harlan's collar. "You sold us. I saved your route for months. And sold it to who else?" The question exposed the final fracture. Harlan shoved him away. Raphael struck him. The two men struggled beside the pickup. Caleb moved toward Annie. Nestor aimed at him, but Esteban said, "Enough." Nestor looked at the lights, the blocked path, Mateo protecting the hostage, and Raphael fighting the deputy who had promised safety. His weapon lowered. "Drop them where we can see them," Mara called. "One at a time." Esteban placed his gun on the ground. Nestor followed. Mateo set his weapon down and raised both hands. Annie ran to Caleb. He pulled her behind him and held her so tightly his ribs protested. "You got the tag?" he asked quietly. She blinked. "That's what you ask." "You all right?" "Yes." "Then the tag." She took it from her sleeve. Blue plastic, mud, and a printed depot code. Caleb closed his hand around it. Raphael saw. "What is that?" "Your first mistake," Caleb said. Raphael broke away from Harlan and reached for Annie. Caleb stepped between them. For a moment, the two men stood close enough to see each other's fear. Raphael expected revenge. He expected the retired ranger to use the darkness, the confusion, and old grief as permission. Caleb did not. "Don't," he said. Raphael raised his weapon. Harlan shouted, "Raphael!" A white beam from the ridge fixed on them. Mara's voice came hard and clear. "Drop it." Raphael looked at the exits, his men, the old farmer, and Annie. He finally understood that no dramatic escape waited beyond the next bend. His crew had stopped believing. His route had become evidence. The deputy who protected him was exposed. He lowered the gun. It touched dirt. Caleb kicked it away only after Raphael stepped back. Law enforcement entered slowly, shields low, commands clear. No one fired. Raphael, Harlan, Nestor, Esteban, Mateo and the others were taken into custody. Mateo kept asking that Luis receive help. Paramedics moved in as soon as the weapons were secured. Caleb told them what he had observed and nothing more. Luis was alive when the ambulance left the draw. At the command post, Mara found Caleb sitting on the tailgate of a state truck while Annie wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. "You look terrible," Mara said. "You got older. You use my frequency. Still works. Barely." She looked at Annie. "You were brave." Annie shook her head. "I was scared. Those can happen together." Mara turned to Caleb. Harlan's unit recorded more than he knew. His microphone jammed open at the ranch. "We have him discussing the route, Depot 4, and moving the cargo." Caleb handed her the blue feed tag. "Found under Raphael's tire." Annie recovered it. Mara read the faded code. D4 Blue 117. Her expression sharpened. "Depot 4. Same supplier tag from Tom's case. You remember the number. Remember the color. We'll need chain of custody." Annie said, "I picked it up with my sleeve and kept it there." Mara smiled faintly. "Good witness." Caleb looked toward the dark line of the draw. Luis mentioned a blue room in the depot. Files, names. Harlan, seated in a patrol vehicle nearby, lifted his head. That reaction told Mara enough to request an immediate warrant. Before sunrise, state investigators entered the abandoned depot with a judge's authorization. The Blue Office held ledgers, route maps, payment records, photographs of ranch gates, and copies of county patrol schedules. One binder reached back 17 years. Inside it was a payment entry dated the night Tom Reyes died. The name beside the amount was not Harlan's. It belonged to a former county official long retired. But beneath it, in younger handwriting, was a note from Wade Harlan confirming that Ranger backup had been redirected. Harlan had not designed the betrayal. He had helped it happen, hidden his part, and spent years becoming useful to the same network. Tom's case had not been solved by a confession in the dark. It was reopened by records, physical evidence, radio logs, living witnesses, and a blue feed tag stuck beneath the wrong truck tire. That mattered to Caleb. Revenge could end with one man. A case could reach everyone who had profited. Weeks later, Rafael Vargas and his crew faced charges tied to kidnapping, assault, organized trafficking, unlawful transport, and the evidence recovered from the ranch and depot. Deputy Wade Harlan faced corruption, conspiracy, obstruction, and charges connected to the old investigation. Mateo and Luis agreed to cooperate through attorneys. Their choices did not erase what they had done, but the law made room for truth without pretending it was innocence. Esteban's stories about Captain Mercer became sworn statements. The cargo numbers Caleb memorized matched depot ledgers. The scratches and blue paint on the truck matched equipment inside the loading bay. The south gate chain carried fresh damage from the convoy. Every small fact became part of a larger answer. Mara visited Caleb 3 days after the arrest. He was repairing the barn door. "You should rest," she said. "Door won't." She handed him a copy of the reopened case notice for Tom Reyes. Caleb read it twice. "This isn't closure," Mara said. "Not yet." "No. But it's movement." He folded the paper carefully. Tom hated standing still. Annie came from the house carrying a new round porch light. It looked almost like June's, though the glass was slightly clearer. "We need help," she said. "With what?" "Grandpa refuses to admit ladders and bad knees are a bad combination." Mara nodded. "Smart." "Conspiracy," Caleb muttered. They replaced the light together. Annie held the ladder. Mara passed up screws. Caleb mounted the fixture beneath the porch roof. When it came on, warm light spread across repaired boards and the patch of dust where Raphael had forced him to kneel. The ranch still carried damage. Tire ruts crossed the yard. One gate leaned. The tack room photograph had a crack in its glass. Caleb did not replace that glass. The crack ran between him and Tom but did not hide either face. Annie stood beneath the new light. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "About being a ranger." "Thought it was past." "It wasn't." "No." "Were you scared?" Caleb looked toward the south ridge. "Yes." "You didn't look scared." "Looking calm is part of taking care of people." She considered that. "Did you know everything would work?" "Not one thing." "Then how did you do it?" He looked over the gates, cattle paths, dry creek, floodlights, barn radio, and roads he had known longer than some of the men who invaded his home had been alive. "Kept noticing," he said. "Kept choosing the next thing that protected you." Annie leaned against him. "And the tag. You noticed that. Because you did." News reports later reduced the night to clean phrases. Ranch invasion, retired ranger, cartel crew arrested, corrupt deputy exposed. One producer wrote the exact title across a screen. Cartel enforcers invaded a Texas farmer's ranch. They didn't know he was a retired Texas Ranger. Caleb never watched it. He fed cattle, fixed the south gate, gave investigators 3 more statements, and visited Tom's grave when the reopened case produced its first indictment. He told Tom the road had finally talked. Then he went home before dark. At sunrise on the first quiet morning after the arrest, Caleb sat beneath June's new porch light with coffee in one hand and the old silver badge on the table. Annie slept inside. The land beyond the yard looked ordinary again, but Caleb knew ordinary land remembered every tire, every lie, and every choice. Age had not made him faster. It had taught him when speed was a mistake. Loss had not made him cruel. It had taught him that justice lasted longer when evidence carried it. They invaded his ranch because they saw an old farmer. By sunrise, they understood why men on both sides of the border once called Caleb Mercer captain.